GoldStar. The history of GoldStar began in South Korea in 1958, when Lucky Chemical decided to establish a division called GoldStar. Interestingly, Lucky Chemical itself was far from electronics. The company was engaged in household chemicals and cosmetics. Nevertheless, the first consumer electronics under the new brand appeared as early as 1959. One of the first products was the GoldStar A501 radio. It was followed by other innovations, the first South Korean refrigerator in 1965 and the first television in 1966. These devices became milestones in the industry. GoldStar played a pioneering role, laying the foundation for the country's electronics industry. The company quickly gained momentum, expanding its product range from household appliances to semiconductors and even lifts and escalators. By the end of the 1960s, GoldStar had firmly established itself as the leader in the domestic electronics market in South Korea. In the 1970s, GoldStar began to actively expand beyond Korea. Already back in the late 1960s, it became the first Korean company to gain a foothold in foreign electronics markets. Initially, GoldStar acted as an OEM supplier, selling televisions to American chains such as Sears and J.C. Penney, which marketed them under their own brands. Thanks to the reliability and low price of its products, GoldStar earned a reputation as a supplier of inexpensive but high-quality components and consumer electronics. In 1977, the company entered the American market for the first time with its own brand, launching sales of the 19-inch GoldStar television. The success of this model paved the way for the export of entire lines of budget equipment, from televisions to audio players, under the GoldStar brand in the late 1970s and 1980s. At the same time, GoldStar invested in high technology, creating its own microchip production, with the aim of eventually competing in the advanced electronics and telecommunications industries. In many ways, GoldStar's strategy in those years reflected its philosophy: expensive electronics without the high price tag. The company sought to offer consumers modern devices at affordable prices. This tactic allowed it to strengthen its position both at home and abroad, especially in the segments of televisions, microwave ovens, refrigerators, and other household appliances. By the early 1980s, GoldStar had already achieved considerable success. In 1982, it became the first Korean company to open a factory in the United States, in Huntsville, Alabama. By the end of the decade, this plant was producing over 1 million color televisions and microwave ovens annually. The rapid growth continued. The revenues of the Lucky GoldStar Group, as the conglomerate was then called, skyrocketed fivefold during the 1980s, from $4 billion in 1980 to $22 billion by 1989, with electronics already accounting for about a third of the revenue. In the 1980s, GoldStar became one of the pillars of the Korean electronics industry. The company expanded production and built new factories, including a modern plant in Pyeongtaek in 1984 for the production of VCRs, PCs, and fax machines. In addition, the company launched increasingly advanced products and invested heavily in research and development. It seemed that the golden star of Korean manufacturing was shining ever brighter. However, in the second half of the 1980s, GoldStar faced serious challenges. Firstly, competition intensified. Samsung, another large business conglomerate, was actively striving to become the leader in electronics. By 1984, Samsung's electronic sales division had surpassed GoldStar in terms of sales and profits, and continued to increase its lead. GoldStar's share of the domestic market fell from 45% at the beginning of the decade to 36% by the end. Secondly, miscalculations in high-tech projects took their toll. For example, GoldStar's investments in its own semiconductors did not pay off. The company failed to establish efficient microchip production, while Samsung successfully advanced in this area. Thirdly, financial stability deteriorated. Aggressive expansion was financed mainly through short-term loans within Korea, as access to external capital was restricted by the government. By the end of the 1980s, up to 85% of GoldStar's operating profit was spent on interest payments on its debts. Socio-economic factors added to the problems. For a long time, GoldStar's advantage was cheap labor, but at the end of the 1980s, a wave of strikes swept through the company's factories. The workers managed to get a pay rise, which deprived GoldStar of some of its competitive advantages and forced it to raise prices. At the same time, the main export market, the United States, was becoming oversaturated, and Japanese manufacturers were increasing pressure on all fronts. But perhaps the most serious blow was to the reputation of the GoldStar brand. By the end of the 1980s, the company's name was increasingly associated with low product quality. In 1990, the authoritative magazine Consumer Reports ranked GoldStar VCRs last among 18 brands in its reliability rating. In the United States, consumers perceived GoldStar appliances as cheap and not of the highest quality. The words Lucky GoldStar even became synonymous with cheap goods on store shelves. This reputation severely limited the company's global ambitions. In addition, internal management problems also had an impact. The Lucky GoldStar conglomerate had grown to more than 30 disparate divisions, between which there was a lack of proper coordination. Management was losing its efficiency. In a rapidly changing global economy, the cumbersome old-style hierarchy began to slow down development. Realizing the critical nature of the situation, the Koo family, the owners of the group, decided on unprecedented measures. In 1989, the founder's son effectively handed over control of the company to a professional manager, Lee Hoon-jo, who had 27 years of experience at Lucky GoldStar. He was given a degree of autonomy unprecedented for a large corporation. Lee was given carte blanche to implement reforms. He only had to report to the family twice a year. The new CEO quickly reorganized GoldStar, cutting unnecessary divisions and focusing on two main groups: consumer electronics and office equipment. Non-core and duplicate projects were shut down or transferred to other companies in the group. Lee also updated the management style to a Western model, improved dialogue with workers, and significantly strengthened marketing in an effort to regain consumer confidence. The results were not long in coming. By the early 1990s, GoldStar had made a real comeback. Sales grew from $4 billion in 1990 to $6 billion in 1994, and profits jumped from $12 million to a record $120 million. By 1994, the company had regained its leadership in the domestic market in key categories such as color televisions, refrigerators, and washing machines. Moreover, GoldStar once again became a contender for a significant share of global semiconductor production, partially making up for lost ground. At the same time, GoldStar began to grow abroad, focusing on new markets, such as Russia and Vietnam, and expanding its presence in North America through local production and partnerships. In 1994 alone, GoldStar sales in the United States grew by 17%, exceeding $1.2 billion. These successes convinced management that a new era awaited the company, and with it, a new brand image. The name Lucky GoldStar, by which the entire conglomerate was known at the time, was outdated and evoked ambiguous associations. Firstly, it was too long and difficult to pronounce for foreigners. Secondly, over the years, GoldStar had acquired the reputation of an inexpensive, second-tier brand, which hindered its advancement in premium markets. The time had come to reinvent itself, preserving its achievements but getting rid of the negativity of the past. The culmination of GoldStar's history came in 1995. It was then that it was officially announced that the legendary Korean Golden Star would disappear, only to be reborn under the new name LG. The chemical company Lucky and GoldStar Electronics officially merged, and the new company changed its name to Lucky GoldStar, then shortened it to LG. The new abbreviation retained the memory of its origins, standing for Lucky GoldStar, but at the same time took on a different meaning for an international audience. The slogan "Life's Good" became part of the brand. In an advertising campaign in early 1995 in South Korea, LG's new logo, a stylized smiling face, was unveiled, and it was immediately announced that Lucky GoldStar was becoming LG. Thus, GoldStar ceased to exist as a brand, but its legacy continued into a new era under the name LG. After rebranding in 1995, the company made a breakthrough into the premium segment. It improved the design and quality of its products, became a leader in television technology, from LCD to OLED, and became a successful manufacturer of mobile phones and household appliances. LG entered the top 100 global brands and took second place in the world in television production, second only to its longtime competitor Samsung. An important milestone was the acquisition of the legendary American brand Zenith in 1995, which helped LG establish itself in the US market. At the turn of the century, the slogan "Life's Good" became recognizable around the world, symbolizing the company's new philosophy of focusing on the quality of life of its customers. GoldStar disappeared as a brand, but it did not fade into obscurity. Its spirit lives on in every LG device, whether it is a modern OLED TV or a smart refrigerator. The journey from assembling simple radio receivers to becoming a technology giant was challenging but inspiring. The history of GoldStar clearly demonstrates how the company was able to rethink itself, overcome reputational barriers, and transform a former symbol of budget technology into a synonym for innovation and high quality. For many, the GoldStar brand will forever remain part of the golden nostalgic era of electronics, and the LG brand is a worthy successor that continues to write history to this day. This video about the GoldStar brand has come to an end, but the story of modern LG and all its successes in the field of TV, video and audio will be told in another separate video. So be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications and don't forget to like. Thank you all very much, and until the next video.